A massive tower there, which again dates back right to the end of the last ice age, a huge megalithic tower with the world's oldest known. If Göbekli Tepe hadn't been found, none of this would have happened. But it's led to a widespread interest in the whole area. So while excavation may have stopped at Göbekli Tepe or may have slowed down, it is continuing elsewhere.
For 12,000 years, a temple lay hidden beneath the hills of Turkey, built by people we thought were primitive.
It's a site that dates back a staggering 12,000 years to the Neolithic period, a site that predates agriculture by about 1,000 years.
Massive 50-ton stones, carved with impossible precision, arranged in perfect circles, long before the pyramids, long before the wheel. Now, AI and laser scans reveal something that shouldn't exist. The marks and geometry suggest knowledge far beyond their time. Who built this? How did they know so much? And what secret were they trying to leave for us? Waiting all these millennia? Göbekli Tepe's ancient stones are speaking, and AI has finally learned their terrifying message. The prehistoric paradox. Imagine stacking 3 full-sized school buses on top of each other. That's 50 tons. That's the weight of the largest pillars at Göbekli Tepe. These aren't rough boulders rolled into place. These are precision-carved monoliths, shaped into perfect T-forms, standing up to 18 feet tall, their surfaces covered in detailed sculptural reliefs that took master craftsmen years to complete.
Each of the 5 stone circles unearthed so far would have required a full year to be completed.
And here's what makes it impossible to explain. These stones weren't found on the hilltop where the temple stands. They were quarried from solid bedrock at the bottom of a steep slope, somehow cut free from the living rock, and then transported uphill to their final positions. Modern engineers calculate that moving a 50-ton block up that grade today would require heavy-duty cranes, reinforced roadways, and a team of specialists with decades of combined experience. These ancient builders did it with no metal, no wheels, no draft animals, and supposedly no sophisticated understanding of physics or engineering. The site sprawls across the hilltop like a frozen city, at least 20 circular enclosures identified so far, with ground-penetrating radar suggesting many more still buried beneath the surface. Each enclosure follows the same basic pattern. A ring of smaller pillars surrounding 2 massive central monoliths, all oriented with careful attention to celestial alignments. The central pillars are carved to suggest humanoid figures, with arms bent at the elbows and hands meeting at the waist, as if frozen guardians standing watch over something sacred. Between and around them, the surfaces crawl with images of dangerous animals, lions with their ribs visible beneath taut skin.
The pillars of Göbekli Tepe are undoubtedly best known for their animal carvings, with the limestone reliefs featuring everything from lions, boars, foxes, donkeys. There's no hybrids. Every single one is an animal that actually exists.
Foxes baring their teeth, scorpions with raised stingers, vultures with wings spread wide, snakes coiling around the edges, wild boars, spiders, creatures that bite, sting, and kill, rendered in what sculptors call high relief, meaning the figures project outward from the stone surface rather than being merely etched into it. Creating high-relief sculpture is extraordinarily difficult. You don't add material to build up the figure. You remove everything around it, carving away the background stone until only the image remains standing proud. One mistake destroys weeks of work. The margin for error is essentially zero. And these ancient sculptors did it on one of the hardest varieties of limestone found anywhere on the planet, using nothing but stone tools, supposedly without any prior tradition of monumental art to guide them. The official explanation asks us to believe that hunter-gatherers, people who spent their entire existence wandering from camp to camp searching for their next meal, somehow developed the organizational capacity to coordinate hundreds of workers over decades, the artistic skill to produce museum-quality sculptures, the engineering knowledge to move 50-ton blocks without modern equipment, and the astronomical awareness to align their structures with precision.
technical skill and manpower needed to move and erect these stones is just astonishing.
All of this from people who couldn't write their names or count past their fingers. The timeline makes it even harder to swallow. Construction at Göbekli Tepe began around 9600 BCE, more than 11,000 years before the present day.
Göbekli Tepe was constructed around 9600 BCE.
The Great Pyramid of Giza, often considered the pinnacle of ancient engineering, wouldn't be built for another 7,000 years. Stonehenge wouldn't exist for 6,000 years. The Sumerian civilization, credited with inventing writing and building the first cities, was still 5,000 years in the future. When Göbekli Tepe was being constructed, humanity was supposedly living in small nomadic bands with no permanent settlements, no agriculture, no social hierarchy beyond extended family groups. Yet someone in that primitive world was directing projects that would be ambitious even today. Someone was feeding hundreds of workers. Someone was teaching complex artistic techniques. Someone was doing advanced mathematics. The conventional story of human progress doesn't have room for any of this. Either the story is wrong, or Göbekli Tepe shouldn't exist. Göbekli Tepe Mystery. The 2025 study began with a simple question: how exactly were these pillars made? Previous researchers assumed the answer was obvious. Ancient people pecked away at the stone using harder rocks as hammers, slowly shaping the pillars over months or years of tedious labor. It's a process called percussion dressing, and it leaves distinctive marks on stone surfaces, rough and irregular patterns showing where each blow landed. The new team brought three-dimensional laser scanners capable of resolving details smaller than a human hair and artificial intelligence trained on databases of known tool marks from sites around the world. They expected to confirm the percussion hypothesis with hard data. Instead, they found something that turned their assumptions inside out.
Others began questioning long-held assumptions about the timeline of human progress, and it wasn't just about the incredible skill of the rocks and carvings.
The AI identified linear cuts running along the pillar edges, perfectly straight lines extending for over 3 feet without deviation. The width of these cuts measured approximately 0.1 inches, extraordinarily thin for any manual technique. When stone tools strike rock, they leave rough, irregular grooves that wander and vary in depth. These cuts were smooth, consistent, and geometrically precise in a way that human hands simply cannot achieve through percussion alone. The computer compared the marks to every documented stone-working technique in its database, from Paleolithic hand axes to Egyptian obelisks to Inca polygonal masonry. Nothing matched. The patterns were too regular, the spacing too consistent, the depth too uniform. The AI then compared the marks to patterns left by modern machine tools. The correlation was disturbingly high. This is what researchers call the machine signature problem. When industrial equipment cuts stone, it leaves specific telltale patterns determined by how the blade rotates or oscillates, how fast it moves, how much pressure is applied. These patterns are recognizable and repeatable because machines do the same thing the same way every time. Human hands cannot replicate this consistency. Even the most skilled craftsman introduces variation from stroke to stroke, minute differences in angle and force that accumulate into visibly irregular results. But the tool, marks at Göbekli Tepe, show the kind of consistency we associate with automation. The spacing between cuts is identical within fractions of a millimeter. The depth varies by less than the thickness of a sheet of paper. It looks like the work of a robot programmed for stone cutting, not a tired human laboring under the prehistoric sun. The implications are staggering and deeply uncomfortable. There is no evidence of metal tools at Göbekli Tepe.
People of Göbekli Tepe didn't have access to metal tools, wheels, or domesticated animals.
No bronze fragments, no iron residue, no chemical traces of metallic compounds that would indicate smelting or forging. If these people had metal, we should find evidence of it embedded in the stone or scattered in the soil. But the site is clean. The AI analysis also examined surface textures at the microscopic level and found something even stranger. In certain areas, the limestone appears to have been not cut, but almost melted. The surface is smoothed in a way that suggests exposure to extreme heat, as if someone ran a blowtorch across the stone to polish it. Modern masons use diamond saws and high-pressure water jets to achieve similar effects. What tool could ancient people have possessed that left these marks? The uncomfortable answer hovering at the edge of the data is that maybe, just maybe, they had something we haven't imagined yet. Fire and ice mystery. Deep in the quarries below Göbekli Tepe, the research team discovered something that changes everything we thought we knew about prehistoric technology. Using chemical analysis techniques, they identified scorch marks and heat damage in the bedrock where the pillars were originally cut. The temperature signatures indicated that portions of the stone had been heated to somewhere between 750 and 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. That's hot enough to cause structural changes in limestone at the molecular level. But the heat wasn't random. It was applied in controlled, linear patterns that correspond exactly to the edges where pillars were separated from the bedrock. Someone was using fire as a precision-cutting tool. The technique is called thermal shock fracturing, and it represents an extraordinarily sophisticated understanding of material science. Here's how it works. You heat a line of stone to extreme temperatures, causing the rock to expand. Then you immediately douse it with cold water. The rapid contraction creates internal stresses that cause the stone to fracture along the heated line. Done correctly, you can split massive blocks from bedrock with relatively little physical effort. Done incorrectly, you shatter the stone into useless fragments. The margin between success and catastrophic failure is razor thin. You need to know exactly how deep the heat is penetrating, exactly how long to maintain the temperature, exactly when to apply the cold water. You need to understand the internal structure of the rock, where natural fault lines run, how different mineral compositions will respond to thermal stress. This is applied physics and chemistry operating at an advanced level. The evidence indicates that whoever built Göbekli Tepe had mastered this technique completely. The quarries show heat application patterns that are surgically precise. The pillar blanks were separated from bedrock along predetermined lines without visible mistakes or false starts. There are no piles of shattered stone from failed attempts, no abandoned blocks cracked by uncontrolled thermal expansion. From the very earliest construction phase, the builders knew exactly what they were doing. This absence of a learning curve is perhaps the most troubling aspect of the entire site. When humans develop new technologies, we always see evidence of experimentation, of trial and error, of progressive refinement over time. We find the crude early versions alongside the polished later models. At Göbekli Tepe, the oldest pillars are the most impressive. The technique appears fully formed in the archaeological record with no developmental precursors anywhere on Earth. The thermal evidence extends beyond the quarries to the finished pillars themselves,
suggesting that Göbekli Tepe might be evidence of something much larger, a glimpse into a lost advanced civilization.
High-resolution scans of the carved animal reliefs revealed microscopic surface features consistent with heat treatment. The stone in these areas has been smoothed and almost vitrified, transformed by extreme temperatures into a glass-like finish that would be extremely difficult to achieve through mechanical polishing alone. It appears the builders had some method of applying focused heat to stone surfaces, melting the outer layer into a durable, weather-resistant coating. Modern stone conservation sometimes uses similar techniques, but we do it with industrial equipment. What tool from 11,000 years ago could produce these effects? The fire and ice technique suggests people with a profound mastery of physics working at the absolute limits of what's possible with natural materials. It doesn't fit the picture of simple hunter-gatherers learning by trial and error. It fits The picture of experts executing methods perfected elsewhere over a span of time we can only guess at. Perfect triangle. Mystery. The AI analysis produced one finding that researchers are still struggling to explain. When the computer calculated the precise center points of the 3 oldest stone enclosures and connected them with lines, a perfect equilateral triangle emerged. Not approximately equilateral, not close enough given ancient limitations. Perfect within a fraction of an inch across, distances of hundreds of feet. The angles measured exactly 60 degrees. The sides were identical in length to tolerances that would satisfy modern surveyors. This geometric relationship was invisible to the naked eye, discoverable only through precise laser measurement and computational analysis. Someone built it into the site 11,000 years ago, and no one noticed until artificial intelligence found the pattern in 2025. Creating a perfect equilateral triangle at this scale requires knowledge that supposedly didn't exist in the prehistoric world. You need to understand geometric principles that we credit to the Greeks nearly 8,000 years later. You need surveying techniques capable of establishing precise right angles and measuring long distances over uneven terrain. You need mathematical calculations to ensure proportional accuracy. And you need a reason to care about geometric perfection in the first place, some cultural or cosmological framework that values precise spatial relationships. Hunter-gatherers moving from camp to camp have no use for surveying. They have no need for computational geometry. Yet someone at Göbekli Tepe was practicing both with expert precision. The geometric precision extends into the individual enclosures themselves. The circular walls maintain consistent radii. The pillar placements follow mathematical patterns. The spacing between elements reveals ratios that suggest intentional design rather than improvised construction. It's as if the entire site was planned on paper before a single stone was moved. Every measurement calculated in advance, every relationship predetermined by minds that understood spatial mathematics at a sophisticated level. The problem is that these people had no paper. They had no writing system to record calculations. They had no number system that we've ever discovered. How do you plan a site of this complexity without any way to write down the plans? How do you maintain precision across decades of construction without permanent records? Either they had tools we haven't found, or they had capabilities we haven't imagined. The mathematical sophistication at Göbekli Tepe suggests something that conventional archaeology refuses to accept. That advanced knowledge existed in the prehistoric world and was subsequently lost. The site doesn't represent the beginning of human intellectual achievement. It represents a high point that was followed by collapse. The people who built it knew things. They understood geometry, physics, material science, and engineering at levels that wouldn't be matched for thousands of years. Then something happened. The knowledge vanished. The techniques were forgotten. Humanity regressed to simpler ways of living. The people who came after, living in the same region just a few generations later, built simple mud huts and showed no evidence of the sophisticated capabilities their predecessors possessed. It's as if a great reset swept through human civilization, erasing everything except the stones themselves. And even those were deliberately buried, hidden from sight, until our own era finally dug them up. Göbekli Tepe's dark secret. Around 8000 BCE, after roughly 1,500 years of continuous use, the people of Göbekli Tepe made a decision that defies explanation.
Exactly what happens at Göbekli Tepe. Around 8000 BCE, after centuries of use, this incredible site was intentionally covered up with tons of soil and debris.
They didn't abandon their temple. They didn't let time and weather slowly reclaim it. Instead, they buried it. They brought in over 10 million cubic feet of fill, material, enough to fill the Empire State Building 10 times over, and systematically covered every enclosure until the entire complex vanished beneath a man-made mountain. This wasn't erosion or natural accumulation. Soil analysis proves the fill was transported from locations miles away. It was mixed with limestone rubble, animal bones, and broken tools in patterns that suggest deliberate ritual placement. They were burying their greatest achievement on purpose, and they were doing it in a hurry. The AI analysis of the burial layers revealed something disturbing about the timeline. The fill wasn't deposited gradually over generations. The packing patterns and sediment compression indicate rapid, intensive work. They were racing to get the site covered as quickly as possible, mobilizing massive labor forces to move mountains of dirt in what appears to be a matter of years rather than decades. Whatever drove them to bury the temple, they weren't taking their time about it. They were fleeing something, or preparing for something, or trying to preserve something precious before it was too late. Scattered through the fill material, archaeologists found human skulls with deep grooves carved into the bone. They found statues that had been deliberately smashed and placed face down in the dirt. They found tools that were broken and discarded in patterns, suggesting ritual destruction. The burial wasn't just concealment. It was ceremony. It was closure. It looks like a funeral for an entire civilization, a final acknowledgement that whatever world had created this temple was ending and wouldn't return. By covering the site so thoroughly, they ensured that the stones would survive. Wind and rain couldn't erode them. Scavengers couldn't carry them off. The carvings would remain sharp, the geometric alignments intact, the message preserved for whoever came looking thousands of years in the future. The timing of the burial coincides roughly with the end of the Younger Dryas, a catastrophic climate event that struck Earth around 11,600 years ago. Temperatures had plunged for over 1,000 years following what many researchers now believe was a cosmic impact, a comet or asteroid strike that triggered global devastation. As the Younger Dryas ended and the world began warming again, the people of Göbekli Tepe chose to seal away their sacred site forever. Were they preserving knowledge from the disaster for future generations? Were they closing a chapter that could never be reopened? Were they hiding evidence of something they feared would be misused? We can only speculate about their motives. What we know for certain is that they succeeded in protecting their work. The temple survived intact beneath its earthen shroud for 10,000 years, waiting in darkness until a farmer's plow struck stone and the long sleep finally ended. Vanished knowledge. What haunts researchers most about Göbekli Tepe isn't what we've found. It's what came after. The site was active for roughly 1,500 years, a span of time encompassing dozens of generations of builders, artists, and priests. These people mastered techniques that modern engineers struggle to explain. They created works of monumental art that stand among humanity's greatest achievements. They understood mathematics, astronomy, physics, and material science at levels that wouldn't be matched for millennia. And then they vanished. Not just the people, but the knowledge itself. The generations that followed, living in the same region, drinking from the same streams, hunting the same animals, showed no evidence of the sophisticated capabilities their predecessors possessed. Archaeological excavations in the surrounding area reveal the stark contrast. The people who lived after Göbekli Tepe was buried constructed simple mud brick dwellings. Their tools were crude, their art was basic. They showed no understanding of the geometric principles encoded in the temple, no ability to work. Stone with thermal shock techniques, and no capacity for organizing large-scale construction projects. It's as if everything the temple builders knew was wiped from human memory in a single generation. The great library of accumulated wisdom that took centuries to build was erased completely. Humanity started over from zero. This pattern of advancement followed by collapse challenges the comfortable assumption that human progress moves in only one direction. We like to believe that knowledge accumulates, that each generation builds on the achievements of the last, that civilizations grow steadily more sophisticated over time. Göbekli Tepe suggests a different model, that high points can be reached and then lost, that capabilities can emerge and then vanish, that humanity has climbed this mountain before only to fall back into the valley. The builders of the temple weren't primitive ancestors fumbling toward the first sparks of civilization. They were the inheritors of something already ancient, masters of techniques developed over spans of time we can only guess at. And whatever catastrophe ended, their world took all of that with it, leaving only the stones to testify that it ever existed at all. The question that keeps researchers awake at night is whether it could happen again. If advanced knowledge was lost once, it can be lost again. If civilization collapsed before, it can collapse again. We assume our own achievements are permanent, that the accumulated wisdom of modern science will survive any disaster. But the people of Göbekli Tepe probably assumed the same thing. They carved their knowledge into stone, the most permanent medium they could imagine. They built monuments designed to survive millennia. They did everything possible to ensure their message would endure. And still, within a generation of the burial, no one remembered what any of it meant. The techniques were gone. The mathematics were gone. The science was gone. Only the silent stones remained, waiting beneath the dirt for someone to find them and start asking questions that have no comfortable answers. Göbekli Tepe has been whispering for 12,000 years, its secrets buried beneath stone and soil. We've uncovered fragments of a story that challenges everything we thought we knew about our past. But most of it remains hidden, waiting. Who built this impossible temple, and why did they leave a message for a future we could scarcely imagine? The questions aren't answered. They're multiplying. And the deeper we dig, the more the past demands that we reconsider the story of human civilization itself. Are we truly ready to face what it's trying to tell us?